You know, I love those press conferences that Trump does when it's for something that's like pretty soft, pretty unrelated to like the hard politics of the day. But then what ends up happening is he fields some questions. The media then wants to ask about the hard news of the day. And the people who are at the press conference are like, wait, I didn't sign up for this. I want nothing to do with this. Are you kidding me? Those are my favorite press conferences. And that's exactly what happened yesterday at the White House. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Glad you're here at 6:05. Starting your day with us on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio. So the administration, along with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, announced yesterday that Washington, D.C. would be the home of the 2027 NFL Draft. Roger Goodell, the NFL Commissioner, saying that he expects more than 1 million visitors to attend the three-day draft, which will be held on the National Mall where the Washington Monument stands. So, of course, this past month it was in Green Bay. The draft will be in Pittsburgh next year. So this is 2 years from now. It was right here in Kansas City a couple of years ago. So they're moving this thing around. And it's great. It's turned out to be a massive hit across all of the NFL. Fans love it. You know, the diehards travel to new cities, make a boys' weekend out of it. Maybe a girls' weekend, too. Probably not a they-them weekend out of it, but you get the point. So it turns into this great spectacle for the NFL versus having it in Radio City Music Hall in New York City every single year. It's been an absolute slam dunk for the NFL. There's no doubt about it, right? And I thought about this as I was watching the press conference yesterday in relation to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because one thing that Roger Goodell said yesterday, as Washington also announced over the last couple of days that they would get a new $4 billion stadium deal, is the fact that a lot of people think that the Chiefs should be moving to a new domed stadium in Kansas under the guise of hosting a Super Bowl one day. And I believe that would happen if the Chiefs were to end up getting a new domed stadium in Kansas. And they would get one Super Bowl. There's no doubt in my mind. They would get one as an honor to the Hunt family. And that would be it. The question for the Chiefs, just like any team that is not in that normal rotation of teams that host Super Bowls, is it worth moving your stadium basically 15 miles down the road and starting from scratch for one game? Literally one game in Clark Hunt's life will probably be a Super Bowl. His kids might see two. But same thing with the NFL draft. I mean, I thought Kansas City knocked it out of the park with the draft, but let's be honest. It's not coming back in the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe it'll be back here in 15, 20 years once they figure out their rotation. But you know, every NFL city in America wants to host this thing. There are 32 NFL teams. So same deal. We had it 2 years ago, but I'm expecting the next time we see it here in Kansas City, I may have grandkids. I might be bringing grandkids to the NFL draft. When the last time I was there, you know, Claire, my oldest, was 4 and Chloe was going on 2 and Charlotte wasn't even alive. Like, that's how this stuff is going to work in the NFL. So then the question becomes this for the Chiefs. Why, if you like where you're at, if you think that's the best setup, do you pick up and go for one moment and one game? And when Roger Goodell is already talking about, you know, NFL stadiums in Washington, D.C. hosting Super Bowls because they're building that new stadium, you know that they're going to be in the mix. You know they might be in not the regular rotation, but let's be honest, Washington, D.C. would be in some type of rotation before Kansas City would. So that's where you have to be honest in terms of what you've got here in Kansas City, what the value is to your regular customer, and whether or not it makes the most sense in the world to do that. So that was the news yesterday, one of the many news items coming out of the White House yesterday, and how I thought the Chiefs' angle ties into all this. The other part of the press conference yesterday, as I was watching Trump make this announcement, Roger Goodell's there, Muriel Bowser is there. She's the mayor of Washington, D.C. They're standing side by side with Trump, and they're really there for the NFL draft. But in classic Trump fashion, he starts taking questions. And boy, those two were squirming side by side. Muriel Bowser wanted no part of it. And Goodell, to his credit, he's trying to keep a straight face, right? Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, he's trying to keep a straight face. He's doing his best. And he was really actually doing well there for a period of time until this question came up. Until Trump gets asked about the viral meme that dropped on Sunday of him as the next pope. Did you guys see that one go viral? Trump as the next pope in an artificial intelligence meme. It was hysterical. And he shares it on social media on Sunday. And, of course, the media for the last, 36 hours now has been outraged by this. Yeah, the good Catholics that they are, the big pro-abortion Catholics that they are, suddenly outraged by a meme, John.
Got them some religion overnight.
Yeah, exactly. They suddenly found their faith because, well, Trump was mocking, they claim, Catholicism. So here we go. This is Trump getting asked about it at a press conference that was supposed to be about the NFL draft coming to Washington, D.C. And it went exactly as you would have imagined.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some Catholics were not so happy about the image of you looking like
some Catholics.
Like the Pope.
Oh, I see. You mean they can't take a joke? You don't mean the Catholics. You mean the fake news media. Not the Catholics loved it. I had nothing to do with it. Somebody made up a picture of me dressed like the Pope, and they put it out on the Internet. That's not me that did it. I have no idea where it came from. Maybe it was AI, but I know nothing about it. I just saw it last evening. Actually, my wife thought it was cute. She said, "Isn't that nice?"
My question about
Actually, I would not be able to be married, though. That would be a lot. I'd have to the best of my knowledge, popes aren't big on getting married, are they? Not that we know of. No. I think it's the fake news media that, they're fakers.
My question, though, sir, was about the fact that it was put out on the White House account. Even though it was AI generated, it was a joke, it was a meme. Does it at all diminish the substance of the official White House account to have it go out on that particular channel?
Give me a break. It was just somebody did it in fun. It's fine. Have to have a little fun, don't you? Yeah, please, go ahead.
Give me a break. Give me a break. There's a new drop there, Mark. You can get on after the show. Give me a break. That was just vintage Trump. And Goodell is standing there, to his credit, with a straight face until Trump looks at him and says, I couldn't be married if I was the Pope, huh? And I don't think the popes are big on getting married. And I will say that is something the Catholic Church should be changing. They should be allowing priests to get married at some point. I mean, that's just talk about antiquated. They've got to fix that, and they've got to move on from that. But neither here nor there. That was vintage and classic Trump. And Muriel Bowser, the Washington, D.C. mayor, is, oh, man, she is squeamish back there. She wanted no part of that moment. And that, I think Trump does that in a large way to make the people around him uncomfortable, but also to give them a front row seat to what he would probably call the show. That's in part what he's doing there. He's like, you know what? I'm going to put on a show. We got Goodell in town. We got Bowser right behind me. I know she's not going to like this, but you know what? I'm putting on a show. And you're going to sit there in the front row, just like you're back in grade school, and you're going to like the show. There are not many people that Roger Goodell has to sit there and deal with that kind of stuff with. And Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is like one of only a couple of people on the planet that Goodell would have to put up with something like that. And considering Roger Goodell gets booed every time he takes the stage at the NFL draft, I guarantee you a lot of NFL fans were like, yeah, go stick it to Goodell, Trump. You got him, buddy. You leave him right where he is. You make him stand there and scream a little bit. That was just fantastic, especially because that was one of the many bizarre questions that came up yesterday. Now, coming up on KCMO Talk Radio on a Tuesday, yesterday was Cinco de Mayo. Were there massive arrests happening courtesy of ICE on Cinco de Mayo? Did you hear any stories like this? Because as the day was progressing, there were reports that all these big events were getting canceled because ICE was going to come in and start raiding these Cinco de Mayo parties. We'll have to see. I'll get you the details coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Were there raids all over Cinco de Mayo parties yesterday around the country by ICE? I don't know. I might have missed them. I know I just try to follow the news for a living, but I did not see this. Maybe you did, and you can let us know at 913-4087-95.7. You know the Kansas City Star would have like headline piece after headline piece about this if it was happening. But this was CNN yesterday mid-morning talking about how Cinco de Mayo celebrations were being pared back. Why? Well, that big bad Trump administration.
Today is May 5th, and that means Cinco de Mayo, Wolf, a holiday that celebrates Mexico's victory over France. But some, in the Battle of Puebla, I should say, but some communities have canceled or scaled back cultural events because of President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration and the fear among many Latinos that they could be arrested.
And Wolf Blitzer sitting there looking like, constipated as ever as that report is being shared. And it's like, wait. Hold on. If you are an American citizen of Mexican descent, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. If you are a legal American citizen, why would you be worried about having any kind of Cinco de Mayo celebration? I suppose if you just watch MSNBC all day and maybe CNN, although I thought they were trying to get on the straight and narrow, you might realize that this is insane and a bunch of nonsense. But Americans who are of Mexican descent had absolutely nothing to fear. And I scoured every national news and local news site I could this morning just to make sure this actually didn't happen, like ICE wasn't raiding Cinco de Mayo events. And of course, it wasn't happening. But in Chicago yesterday, their parade was on pause. Why? It was canceled over fears of President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Nearly half of the parade sponsors dropped out after the city became a major target for immigration enforcement agents, according to organizers. Adding, there's nothing to celebrate. Well, let's not forget that this is largely, Cinco de Mayo is not a federal holiday in Mexico. It's really just a celebration of Mexican customs and traditions here in the United States. It's an excuse to have that one Corona a year. Maybe a marg. We made homemade nachos yesterday with the girls. That's what we did. And I was surprised. Claire came home. I'm like, hey, it's Cinco de Mayo. And she's like, what? What? She had no idea. So I guess it did not come up at school, which is fine. If they're actually learning things at school, that's fine. What'd you do yesterday with the girls, Mark? Any Cinco de Mayo celebrations there with the young ones in the house?
After basketball practice, we went through the Taco Bell drive-thru and got a taco.
Oh,
So that was about it. No ice raids there.
No,
Off Johnson Drive by IKEA.
Yeah, I know that one well. Back by the old stomping grounds there.
Yeah.
And John knows every Mexican deal in town, so he was well taken care of yesterday for his Cinco de Mayo.
Homemade yesterday.
Okay, homemade for John Anthony. How about that? Same here. Very well done. So no Cinco de Mayo raids, another just fake news story.
Fake news.
That was promoted by the media to create unnecessary fear. But, that's par for the course these days, is it not? Now, speaking of Trump, there was some new polling that came out yesterday, courtesy of Rasmussen. Now, this is one of the more accurate pollsters out there, and it's fascinating what came out of this poll. First off, when you look at Donald Trump's overall approval, according to Rasmussen, he's got Trump at 50% approval in his most recent poll that he dropped yesterday. And what's fascinating, too, is that Donald Trump's support is better amongst younger Americans, in many cases, than it is older Americans. So take a look at this. This is pretty incredible stuff. New Trump polling from Rasmussen. Donald Trump's largest support bloc right now is married men between the ages of 18 and 39. So, I'm on the higher end of that. But that is right now the largest block of support for President Trump. His second largest block of support is married men 65 plus. So interestingly, in the middle, Trump is plus 15 with married men 40 to 64, but his greatest support group is married men 18 to 39. So if that's you right now, just know that you are part of the largest block of Trump supporters in the country, 18 to 39-year-old married men. After that, as I noted, married men 65 plus, then unmarried men 40 to 64, and unmarried men 65 plus. Followed by, and this is a fascinating turn, married women between the ages of 18 and 39. So that 18 to 39-year-old age group, the married folks, are overwhelmingly Donald Trump supporters. What about those who are unmarried in that 18 to 39-year-old age group? Look at this. Unmarried men, 18 to 39 years old, support Trump. They have a net, let me see. Actually, this is technically a net disapproval of 6% for unmarried men, 18 to 39. But the biggest block of Trump haters, unmarried women, 18 to 39. So unmarried women, 18 to 39 years old, are minus 37 on Trump approval. That's right, minus 37. But married women, 18 to 39, are Trump plus 21. So that is a 58-point swing. That's the biggest swing in the entire poll of Trump approval. 18 to 39-year-old women. If they're married, they're Trump plus 21. If they're unmarried in that age bracket, they are Trump minus 37.
Well, you remembered the commercial, Pete. That's because their husbands told them to vote that way.
Oh, that's right. Good memory there, John. Very good memory from pre-election when these PACs were dropping these polls of like, yeah, you can buck your husband once you get into the booth. It's a secret. And then you can come out of the booth and you can tell him, yeah, honey, don't worry. I voted for Trump.
Did you vote the right way, dear?
Yeah. Oh, man, that one's burnt into your mind, John. That is.
That was classic.
It was. So then the question becomes why? Right? Well, as someone who's in that age bracket, I mean, I see that in my world. I don't know about you, but I see that. If you are married between the ages of 18 and 39, you probably see that in your life. Married men and married women are much more likely to support this president and this administration than those who are unmarried. And it's because of where you're at in life. You're having kids. You've had kids. You care about different things. You cannot sit there and just act outraged by something that Donald Trump is doing or not doing. You've got real life consequences with your children and your schools. You don't want them going in the locker rooms with people who are not the same gender as them. You just care about different stuff. And that's why the biggest age gap breakdown is amongst those young people. News in 2 minutes, and when we come back, I hope Kansas City does not steal this idea from another city next. I heard this idea and I thought to myself, would we want this in Kansas City? It sounds good in theory, and I'm open to any new ideas. But I have some questions. 6:35, good morning. Great to have you here to start the morning on KCMO. So this is out of New York where their mayor, Eric Adams, announced that businesses will now have a panic button where they will basically be able to push this button and alert the police to something nefarious and illegal happening at their business. Whatever it might be, it's kind of like a life alert. They just push the panic button. Here was Mayor Adams in New York talking about this yesterday.
Mayor says,
panic button that you'll immediately be able to hit that is going to alarm the police and it's going to be connected directly to the local precincts. When you do the combination, it's going to give you access to the cameras in the store to see what is taking place and how we could get an immediate response.
All right, that was New York City Mayor Eric Adams. At first glance, I'm like, this is great. This actually makes a lot of sense. You have this button on you if you're a business in anywhere. Plaza, Brookside, Waldo, downtown, River Market. I mean, go on and on down the list, 18th and Vine. Who cares? You have this button, and if something illegal starts happening in your business, you hit the button. The problem is it doesn't solve the issue. And the issue is we don't have enough cops in and around Kansas City. We don't have the amount of bodies that we need to be able to respond to crimes in a timely manner. That's the problem right now in Kansas City. What was it last week when there were some major crimes in the Waldo area? And you had some of these folks being like, yeah, we called 911, but, these guys were trying to steal vehicles, and the cops showed up 20 minutes later. Some of you might say, hey, that's a pretty good turnaround time in Kansas City,
yeah.
On
a stolen vehicle.
Yeah, some may say that's great. But if you don't have the bodies that you need in law enforcement, then it doesn't matter how quickly you alert somebody. That's not your problem. Your problem is you don't have the police officers that you need. You don't have the people to respond as quickly as you need them to respond. And remember this, there is one thing that Kansas City and New York City have in common. You've got two cities that are almost identical in square miles. They're both about 319 square miles. The difference, of course, is that you've got about 500,000 people in Kansas City, and you have 16 times as many people, 8 million, in New York City. So you obviously have a much more dense population in New York, and you obviously have, as a result, far more police officers with NYPD. Now, they're down. They're down just like every major department is down after the defund police movement a half a decade ago. It's been hard to recruit. It's been hard to get people on the job. There have been early retirements in the whole 9 yards. So every major city is dealing with a lot of the same problems. But this is one of those things that makes for a great press conference. And they were like outside of a bodega as they were doing, or bodega, as Jill Biden would call it. They were outside a New York City bodega yesterday, and they're doing this like, the panic button will save us all. If you don't have a cop that can show up, what's it matter anyway, John?
Symbolic gesture, right?
Yep.
This looks good. I feel good. I got this button.
Yep.
Well, yeah. And you push the button. Your call is important to us. Please hang on the line. All of our representatives are busy now.
Well, yes, and to your point, too, if you've got a 911 dispatcher shortage, which, as I understand it, we still do, then who's alerting the cops?
We're working on that, right?
Yeah.
So unless this goes to some special little elf that can get that signal out.
Yeah, that's so true.
How quickly you expect anything to happen any faster than you can dial 911.
Especially with the cell phone. It's not like you're in a bodega and you're like, I got to go get my landline. We all have one of these in our pockets. 911, what's your emergency? Mm-hmm. As I put my phone to my ear. Yeah, I've got somebody committing a crime. Okay, great. I'll get somebody there as soon as I can. The panic button doesn't change that if your structural problems have not been fixed. It's like if you got a leak in the house, right? You got major foundation issues. Putting a slap of paint on the outside is not going to do you any good. You got structural problems right now. And whether it's Kansas City or New York City, they're all dealing with a lot of the same things. And it's not because of anything that KCPD or NYPD is doing or not doing. It's because we're still digging out of this anti-cop movement that has been going on now for half a decade. And while I think that for the most part, the wokest of the woke have backed off it, you don't just rehire these cops overnight. It is going to take years to rebuild law enforcement, especially in some of the most dangerous parts of the country. And that, in and of itself, is just a shame. Now, speaking of law enforcement, can Donald Trump really pull off a reopening of Alcatraz? Oh, you guys are laughing in there. I know. I went down the rabbit hole on Alcatraz last night. I read, normally what I've got to do to prep for the show is try to get as many stories as I can. We've got our big stories, obviously, and I got to do deep dives on those as much as I can. But this one, I went just way down the rabbit hole for Alcatraz. So Trump wants to reopen Alcatraz. Of course, little island there off of San Francisco. It hasn't been open in decades at this point, but he wants to reopen Alcatraz. And we all laugh at it. I get it. But for Trump, this is not actually about having the prison. To me, what Trump is going for here is just a message that we will now be, or once again be, a country of law and order, which, of course, we lost in 2020 through the last 4 years of Joe Biden. We lost it on immigration. We lost it on crime and urban cores in America. And we lost it just, I think, in American decency. People started to accept things like petty theft from Target because, well, as AOC once said, they got to feed their families, man. They got to eat. That's why they're stealing from Target. It's like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Not under this guy. So Trump was asked about reopening Alcatraz yesterday during a press conference, and here's what he had to say.
Reopen Alcatraz. How will you use it? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I guess I was supposed to be a movie maker. We started with the movie making, and we'll end. I mean, it represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate, right? Alcatraz, Sing Sing and Alcatraz, the movies. But it's right now a museum, believe it or not. A lot of people go there. It housed the most violent criminals in the world, and nobody ever escaped. One person almost got there, but they, as you know the story, they found his clothing rather badly ripped up. And it was a lot of shark bites, a lot of problems. Nobody's ever escaped from Alcatraz, and just represented something strong having to do with law and order. We need law and order in this country, and so we're going to look at it. Some of the people up here are going to be working very hard on that, and we had a little conversation. I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll see if we can bring it back in large form, add a lot. But I think it represents something.
All right, that was Trump, the movie maker himself, going down the rabbit hole of the Alcatraz movie. So I couldn't get enough of this last night. So I'm reading story after story on the history of Alcatraz, which averaged a prison population of about 260 to 275 at any given time. And Alcatraz saw 14 separate escape attempts involving 36 men over its 29 years as a federal prison. The most successful and elaborate escape attempt came in 1962. 3 men vanished from their cells, were never seen again. Of course, the escape was part of the 1979 Clint Eastwood movie, Escape from Alcatraz. Now, the FBI's investigation of the escape uncovered an ingenious plan devised over several months. They used spoons and homemade tools, including a drill made from a vacuum cleaner motor, to get out of Alcatraz. On the night they escaped, they used their dummy heads to fool the night guards while they slipped out of their cells. They crawled through a ventilator shaft on the prison's roof that they had previously cut open and left temporarily secured with a bolt made from soap. But it's believed the group never made it to land and disappeared in the cold waters of the San Francisco Bay. The FBI concluded they likely drowned, but no bodies were ever recovered. So Trump was talking about the shark bites. Mm-hmm. I think that was more for the movie than it was in real life based on the FBI's investigation.
Right.
But either way, Trump is fascinated by it. And, when he says there, this is about law and order. It's probably not going to happen. I think this is one of those things that Trump just says that creates, for a day or two news cycle and then gets studied and kind of goes away. But I appreciate the messaging here, and I think for Trump, that's what this is as much about as anything.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how when he deals with symbolism, they get all literal.
Yeah.
Right? But there's shoes on the other foot here. It'd be more like Trump to say that he's going to maybe take Puerto Rico over and make that island a whole bigger federal penitentiary system or something. He's going to buy an island and make a new Alcatraz bigger. Big, beautiful Alcatraz.
Yeah, big, beautiful Alcatraz.
On a new island somewhere.
For Trump, this is more about saying, hey, in this country, whether it's on immigration or whether it's just on, crimes in American cities, we're not putting up with it anymore. And if that means we got to consider reopening Alcatraz, well, guess what? I'm going to talk about it. And maybe it makes for a news cycle in a given week. And that's what I really think this is about. Setting up the news cycle for a couple of days and sending the message of we're not taking this anymore. Okay, law-abiding citizens are not going to sit there while their neighbors have to deal with crime because people suddenly turn a blind eye to it. We're done with that. Those days are over. And that feels like what this is really about as much as anything else. If I were to put money on it right now, if I were to take the old Van Sickle approach and bet on this thing, I wouldn't bet on Alcatraz being open by the end of Trump's term. But I do think it just makes for a great message to the American people, and that's what this is really about.
Well, we'll have to disprove Trump's plan. We'll have to say that it's not ADA compliant, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. They'll go into literal stories like, well, he can't do that because.
It's the classic media mistake. Mm-hmm. They take Trump literally, but never seriously. And as long as they keep doing that, they will fail miserably to cover the guy.
They'll try to escape. They'll be eaten by sharks. They don't want to be eaten by sharks. They won't try to escape.
It's really that simple, isn't it? We dodged a lot of bullets this past fall. We really did, including the fact that you know and I know if things went the other way, we'd be sitting here talking about how the people in charge would be trying to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in unpaid student loans to bail out the big colleges and the major universities, and to basically have those who didn't go to college foot the bill for those who did, or for those who paid their way to foot the bill for those who did. Thankfully, that's not happening. And yesterday, the Department of Education says that federal student loan borrowers who do not pay on time could damage their credit scores and even have their wages garnished starting this week. Now, this is not likely to happen this week, but this is now back to the forefront of the conversation. So this is obviously welcomed news. Not because I want to see regular people struggle to pay their bills, but because for far too long, these colleges have been getting away with giving kids garbage degrees, putting them in six figures in debt to get these garbage degrees. And then saying, you know what? We got ours. What do we care? That's been the approach for colleges and universities for way too long now. Certainly for at least the last couple of decades, since these tuitions have skyrocketed past the rate of inflation. But the Education Department said yesterday it will be using the Treasury Department's offset program to collect on the debt by withholding payments through tax refunds, salaries, and even, in some cases, benefits like Social Security payments. Now, that's not going to impact many people because if you're 65 plus and you're still paying back your student loans, got some bigger fish to fry. Just going to leave it at that. All right. But under the program, the government can withhold entire federal tax refunds and up to 15% of a federal worker's disposable pay. The government said the FSA would send notices about wage garnishments later this summer. So this is now something that is going to be happening in the weeks ahead. And this has not happened going back 5 years because it was March of 2020 when Trump announced in the middle of COVID that they would be pausing collections on most federal student loans. And Joe Biden continued to pause those collections when he took office for basically 4 years. And then he tried to bail out student loan borrowers in the process, which really was a bailout for the colleges. And that's, I mean, we talk about the surface area part of this, which is obviously like, hey, should people have their loans bailed out? And the answer is no. But the underbelly of all this is holding colleges accountable for the worthless degrees that they are selling these young people on. And that's what they're doing. They're selling you a dream. They're saying, hey, you come here. Yeah, you're going to go into debt, but don't worry. You will be prepared for the workforce. And in so many cases, they're not. They're not prepared for the workforce. And there's two ways this can go. This can result in a generation of young people coming to an obvious conclusion of, wow, I got screwed by my college. Wow, they said if I go into $100,000 in debt, I'll come out on the other side with a great job and I'll be able to pay it back. And don't worry, you're going to have a college degree. You'll be A-okay. And they can realize they were fleeced. The other way it goes is they say, this big, bad government will bail out my student debt. Oh, my goodness, what's wrong with them?
How dare you?
And they blame it, of course, on the administration. I'm more than willing to roll the dice on this thing. And I don't even think it's a roll of the dice. It's just common sense. It's, hey, you take out a loan, you pay back your loan. And you do this because it's not just a message to those people who took out these loans. It's a message to the colleges. It's a message to those who paid back their loans. It's a message to those who didn't take out loans. It's a message to those who didn't go to college because they had the foresight to say, one, I know I'm going to go there and I'm be in a lot of debt. Two, there are great careers that I can have not going to college. I can make, in some cases, a lot more money not going to college in certain careers than I will be able to going to college. You got organizations like one of our partners here on the show, Centric. They developed the technology workforce in all of a few months here in Kansas City at Centric. You don't have to spend 4 years taking worthless courses to prove that you are a well-developed and well-rounded thinker. It's not 1965, it's 2025. Going into debt for that is completely worthless. And that's why you're seeing as well a downturn of young people actually going to college. The numbers have been coming down over the last several years where you've got a lowering of 18 to 24-year-olds who are enrolled in higher education. And while, yes, it's important if that is where your skill set is at to go to college and get a degree, it doesn't have to necessarily be the traditional path of a 4-year education, whether it's a 2-year JUCO followed by a 2-year private school, 2-year public school, 4-year public, 4-year private, doesn't much matter. You don't necessarily have to take this one-size-fits-all approach. And if the Trump administration wants to look at this beyond just like, hey, pay back your loans, kids, there can be a message here. There can be actually a movement here, whether it's led by Linda McMahon, President Trump, J.D. Vance, whoever it might be, to say there are a lot of great opportunities. I would include Mike Rowe in this, by the way, the dirty jobs guy. I would get him involved with the administration. I would get him involved with the Department of Education. He would be happy to do it. I mean, this guy's on Fox all the time talking about electricians and plumbers, and I could take calls, I'm sure, this morning of folks in these jobs that are considered, quote, blue collar, that are making way more money than your gender studies major coming out of KU or Mizzou. It's not even close. And, of course, you're talking a fraction of the debt, if any of the debt. So with this now being back in the conversation this week, I'm all about it. I think this makes all the sense in the world. And, frankly, a part of me says, what took you so long? With the Department of Education restarting collections of loans in default this week. Now, what's the media going to do with this? Oh, come on. You know and I know what they're going to do, right? It's already started. CBS has a story yesterday. Student loan borrowers struggle to pay and get answers as debt collections begin. With the following quote, "We're kind of drowning." You knew it was coming, John.
Well, part two will be that it affects the minority communities even more.
Yes, of course. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, of course, you've got millions of people who now have to pay back their student debt. And CBS News finds one story of one woman who has $40,000 in student loans from her nursing degree, who 2 years ago, when her son was born with a medical condition, she exhausted her savings and took money out from her 401k to pay for some of these health issues her child was dealing with. Obviously, that's tragic. That's also 1 in a million. That's not your standard student loan borrower who hasn't made a payment in 5 years, who is now wanting some type of student loan relief. But we're going to find the most bizarre story that we can. We're going to find the most unlikely story that we can and use that as an example to make the administration look bad for trying to collect on the debt that people willingly took out and that these colleges willingly gave to these young people. And the real bad guys in all this are the universities and the colleges themselves. They don't care. They get theirs. You can't default on this student loan debt, so they're making the money hand over fist. They don't care. And they're the ones who should be on the hook. They're the ones who should be held responsible if they are giving out massive loans to young people and then teaching them garbage that doesn't actually develop any skill set that makes money in the economy. I mean, if you're a bank and you give out a loan to somebody for a business and that business doesn't have obviously any profits, goes belly up, and you don't get your money back, you're taking that risk as a bank. These colleges have no risks right now, and they have got to come to the table and start accepting some of the risk. And until they do, they're going to keep this whole charade up. They are not going to change their ways. No doubt about it. 913-408-7957. It's 7:15. It's great to be here on a Tuesday morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO, and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Pete, this is on the text line. I totally agree on paying student loans back, but this is going to catch parents who co-sign for the debt, and they're going to be hit because their kids can't adult. It's a risk that they also took. Hey, you're right about that. Parents are going to be on the hook in some cases. But you have parents who are the ones who also put their kids in these positions to get degrees that are worthless. Absolutely worthless. There you go, Bill. Fired up this morning on a Tuesday, as are we. 913-408-7957. Those student loan repayments will, they're not going to start this week, but the process will get back underway in many cases this week. Collections could begin as soon as the next several days, but likely to potentially wait until midsummer, give or take, depending on, if they have to garnish wages or what they have to do. 913-408-7957. Anna's in Overland Park. Hey, Anna, you're on KCMO. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I am going to try and articulate this as quickly and concisely as possible and hopefully bring another conversation or another side of the conversation to the table. I am one of those people that you're referencing that, have this exorbitant amount of student loan debt and am not able to repay it. And there's multiple factors that go into why somebody accumulates that student loan debt. For me, for example, I was initially seeking a nursing degree, and every college has a different set of prerequisites that are required to even apply for that nursing school. So I found myself taking all of these additional classes and acquiring all this additional debt to apply to multiple nursing schools. And I was promised all this support by, external forces, family and whatnot. And when I was accepted to nursing school, I wasn't able to continue because that support stopped for reasons we would not even have enough time to get into. But it forced me to have to change my degree, and I had already acquired so many credit hours that I actually was able to have a minor in biology and had to change my degree to healthcare administration. Fast forward, I am in healthcare administration utilizing my degree, and my employer does not compensate me enough to even touch my student loans. I barely have enough to take home and provide for my family on a 2-week basis, let alone repay the student loan debt that is actually being utilized to build their corporation. And so, that is like one aspect. And I know that my situation isn't the whole, but I think also employers and the education system is to blame for this. For a long time, employers said to us, what's your degree? We need a degree. And then they offered this measly $40,000 annual salary that didn't allow us, that brought a degree to the table, to even start to repay those student loans, let alone, we're not taking these lavish vacations. We're not living outside of our means. We're trying to get by day by day. And, the weight of a student loan debt hangs over our head. It's not something that we actively have and we're like, oh, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to go to Tahiti for 2 weeks and blow a bag. But, I just think that, employers are to blame. I think the education system is to blame. They told us, they set us up all the way from elementary school to junior high to high school. Let me
ask you that. Let me ask you this, Anna, because listen, I do not envy that position, and you're right. You're not the norm in this spot, but I can't imagine it. It must be very difficult. But Do you look at your situation and say to yourself, gosh, it's unfortunate what happened, but do you look at it and say, I can make more money if I go do X, Y, or Z? Is there a way that you feel like you can develop your resume to the point where you are getting a 20% raise on top of what you're making right now somewhere else?
Oh, I love that question. I was actually hoping you were going to ask me that. I do. The problem is when we're dealing with healthcare, there's an ethics that comes with it, especially as healthcare providers. And it's really, really, really hard to find the compensation and the ethics in one place. And for me, it's been the compensation that I forfeited because of the ethics. I'm very passionate and I care very deeply about my healthcare career and the ethics in which I partner with my providers in. And so because of that, my compensation suffers. And, I look to the future and hope, maybe my tenure will eventually pay itself. But for me, I have to be able to know that I'm doing the right thing for the right reason every day and providing patients with the best care that I know that I can be responsible for. And
so I've got about 30 seconds, Anna. What is the answer then? I mean, should the government bail out your loans in your case, or is it just, hey, the system has to change?
I think the system is really broken. I have family that lives in Australia, and they have, for lack of better terms, they have a more socialistic approach to education. Higher education is available to all, and the repayment doesn't happen until an annual compensation of a certain amount is reached, and that's looked at year over year. And so it gives those students the time to be able to build a career, build a family without getting out of college, and then bam, 6 months later, you're in repayment. And that's the reality. We
gotta run, Anna. Gotta run. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. Best of luck. But listen, I don't think the Australia model is one for the United States. But I do think an awareness by parents and adults is the first step, and you're seeing that happen in real time. You are seeing parents and students say, you know what, I don't need to put myself into debt for X, Y, or Z. If we just create a higher education system that anyone can go to with no strings attached, then the value of that degree goes down, and it forces people into college that don't necessarily need to be there. That's something to consider as well. I was just there on Saturday. I was at Harvard, and I asked them for an honorary degree, but since I'm a white, straight Christian male, they told me to go pound sand, unfortunately, but that's the world we live in. I just gave them the offer. I figured, hey, I'll go there and see what they're all about. I was visiting my brother. We went to a Red Sox game on Saturday. He's been up there for a few years. And I'd never been on the Harvard campus. I know it'll surprise you that when I was doing college tours, I never stopped at Harvard. So I finally had to go. I figured I'd at least see some type of anti-Semitic protest breakout, but that didn't happen either. So didn't see the protest, didn't get my honorary degree, left empty-handed, such is life. But yesterday, the administration announced that Harvard is now ineligible to receive new research grants from the federal government. This came in a letter from Education Secretary Linda McMahon. She sent the letter to the Harvard president, Alan Garber, and she slammed Harvard for engaging in a systemic pattern of violating federal law and advised him that the university will no longer be eligible for funds. Now, you might think, and Linda McMahon notes this, hey, they got a $53 billion endowment. They can fund whatever they want on their own. Here's the problem for Harvard. It's not as rosy as it looks. Bill Ackman is a big hedge fund guy. He is a Harvard alum. He stopped donating to Harvard after October 7th, after the protests on campus, after Harvard did nothing about it. And he's now become, and this guy was like classic Wall Street Democrat up until basically 18 months ago. And now he's been a big proponent of President Trump. He has gone after Harvard ad nauseum on how they've conducted a lot of their acceptance standards. And he's called them out for basically being racist against Asian students in particular. during their admissions processes. So that's been something he's been very vocal about. And now he's also been very vocal against Harvard on this issue, as they have basically told the Trump administration on DEI and everything else to pound sand. And now the administration is firing back and saying, basically, you're done when it comes to federal grants. So Bill Ackman was on CNBC yesterday, and this is the first time I've heard somebody lay out the fact that Harvard's endowment of $53 billion is not as impressive and not nearly as liquid as it's perceived to be. So this can have a major impact on this university. Here's what Bill Ackman said.
Harvard is not in a good financial position. This is something I think is not well appreciated. They nominally have a $53 billion endowment. I don't believe the carrying values of their endowment. 80% of the assets are invested in real estate, private equity, and venture capital.
So it's not liquid.
It's not liquid, and they're apparently selling a $1 billion slice of their private equity. Watch where that gets priced relative to the carrying value of the portfolio. My guess is it could be 30-40% below the current carrying value to get a bid. If in my business, if I owned a slice of something, I sold a piece of it at a 30-40% discount, I'd have to remark my entire portfolio. So one, the endowment, in my view, is massively overstated in terms of what it's really worth. The second thing is no one talks about the fact that Harvard now has $8 billion of debt. I read the prospectus for the recent bond issue. So you have $53 billion of overstated assets that are illiquid, and you have $7.9 billion of debt, which you owe. As a donor, do you want to give money to a nonprofit institution, which is going to go into the institution and going to go out the door to pay money interest to bondholders? My experience is nonprofits that borrow money, it doesn't end well. And then you have, what do they rely on for current funding? Money every year from the U.S. government, money every year from donations. Donations, I don't know, I have to believe they're down meaningfully. And tax-exempt status. Another reason that induces people to give money to their university is to get a tax deduction.
Fair or unfair to try to take the tax-exempt status away?
I think it's fair. Again, the Harvard became, over time, a political advocacy organization for one party. When a university goes from being a university to affecting becoming a political advocacy organization, it doesn't deserve nonprofit status.
That was Harvard alum and hedge fund titan Bill Ackman on CNBC yesterday, calling out his own university and saying what the Trump administration is doing is right. And this guy was a Democrat 2 years ago, by the way. I just think that's important to note here. He's basically saying they've got a $53 billion endowment, but it's not what you think it is. It's not just like a mountain of cash that they're sitting on. It's private equity, it's real estate. So if they've got to start selling things off to basically fund the monies that were typically funded by federal grants, that puts the college in a bad spot, especially when, as he noted, they've got $8 billion in debt. So where are they getting money from? They get money from federal grants. They get money from, yes, tuition, although how many people are paying the $80,000 tuition out of pocket to go to Harvard? A lot of those are going to be discounted scholarships and things like that anyway. And then donations from wealthy donors. And obviously, they have some of the wealthiest donors on the planet. But still, how many of those people want to give monies to a university that then is just using that money to pay off interest on debt of which they've got $8 billion? So this idea, and listen, I'm all for it. I am all for basically saying to Harvard, if you can't play by the rules and you can't have an institution that is really about diversity of ideology, that is really going to be a true meritocracy, take it all away. I'm on board with that 110%. But there's even more downside to this for Harvard than we initially thought. Because it's not like they just take out of their $53 billion bank account and make up the losses from the federal grant monies. And that's why this is just a fascinating story when you talk about the future of elite institutions in America with the way that the Trump administration is playing hardball. One of my favorite lines in this article from Education Secretary Linda McMahon to Harvard yesterday was when she blasted them for hiring former mayors Bill de Blasio of New York City and Lori Lightfoot of Chicago to teach leadership at its School of Public Health. And McMahon says, this is like hiring the captain of the Titanic to teach navigation to future captains of the sea. That is just fantastic. That's outstanding. What a great line from Linda McMahon. And you can still join us. Guy Benson's event. He's coming to Kansas City June 12th. Tickets are on sale now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. Dinner, drinks, meet and greet show, the whole 9 yards. We look forward to seeing you out there. So the story around Baltimore Ravens kicker Justin Tucker has been misconstrued over the last 24 hours. This is the guy who you may recall in the AFC Championship game. It would be the 2023 AFC Championship game when the Chiefs were in Baltimore. Before that game, Justin Tucker was warming up on the Chiefs side of the field. And in a since viral clip, Travis Kelce walked up to him, picked up his helmet, and threw it out of the end zone. Remember that? That was a great moment. And Tucker really has never been the same since that moment. He just has not been the same guy. He got cut yesterday by the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the other backstory here for Tucker is that there have been 16 massage therapists from 8 different Baltimore spas and wellness centers who accused him of inappropriate behavior from alleged incidents between 2012 and 2016. He's denied the allegations since then. But what happened here is the moment the Ravens saw that this guy was deteriorating as a player, they said, you know what, we're moving on. He's going to be 36 this year for an NFL guy that's basically ancient. And they said, you know what, we can find another kicker. And Tucker was not great last year. He wasn't. Now, he's an all-time kicker, but he was not great last year. He only made 73% of his field goals. That was field goal attempts. That was a career low. The last couple of years, he was at 86%. Prior to last season, he hit 94% of his field goal attempts in 2020. In 2019, he hit almost 97% of his field goals. In 2016, he was money, 97.5%. He's an all-time kicker. But he got old. They didn't want to deal with the headache, and they decided to move on. And they said enough's enough. So when you look at this story, some people are going to say, well, you know, they finally realized that it's time to move on from this guy because of these accusations. Actually, they realized it's time to move on because the accusations were no longer worth it to the team because he was deteriorating as a player. Teams will put up with a lot of nonsense for a really good player. Heck, look at what the Cleveland Browns did with Deshaun Watson. He had accusations up the wazoo about him from his time down in Houston. Browns gave him a fortune to play quarterback, and he stunk, and it looks like an absolutely horrible deal, but they gave him a fortune. And it was, as I recall, Deshaun Watson got like guaranteed money, right? At look, $200+ million.
Yeah, over $200 million. And he was the highest. It was the highest paid contract at the time.
Yeah,
in NFL history.
and the accusations were out there about this guy. Meaning what? Especially at that position in sports, it's unlike any other. They don't care if they think you can win. They don't care about your race. They don't care about your accusations. And they will give you all the money they can possibly give you. Now, it's also the Cleveland Browns who are just a dumb organization in general. But it puts to bed the narrative that anything around Shedeur Sanders in the NFL draft was racially motivated. The Colin Kaepernick thing, forget it. I don't want to go back to that time. But same thing with, Kaepernick can't get a job because of, his opinions and his politics and his skin color. It's like, no, he can't get a job because nobody wants a headache as backup quarterback. If any team thought that Colin Kaepernick could win him a Super Bowl, he would be on a team right now. He can't. He's not worth the headache. Justin Tucker deteriorates as a player. He's no longer worth the headache. It's really that simple.
And the Browns drafted 2 quarterbacks this year. And Massage Watson is still there.
Yeah, that's right. Massage Watson, I like.
The issue is they're not whacking enough.
Massage Watson, that's well done there, Mark. Excellent job. That's good. Yeah, he's still there. They've got like a 5-way quarterback battle. Joe Flacco's in the mix too.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like they can't. I guess they can cut Watson, but they still owe money for 2 more years, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The organization's a mess. They better hit on one of those rookie quarterbacks. They got to save money where they can right now. So you look at this story in particular, and everybody who has said that all these players that sports media has tried to make into victims because of skin color. Always bizarre. I'm not saying Justin Tucker's a victim. Now, he may be innocent. He has denied these allegations of what happened at these massage parlors in the Baltimore area. But the Ravens basically said it's no longer worth it. He is not good enough to put up with the headache. And that's true for all of us, right? At some point, people who are really good, they get a little more leeway than those who aren't good at their jobs. You could look at any industry. Certainly the radio industry has no shortage of examples of that, right? Where people who are really good at what they do have a little more leeway in what they get away with. Media in general is an example of that. But every industry has that. You could have a great mechanic that you work with. And you say, the guy's late, but his prices are great, and he does an outstanding job, and I know the job's getting done, so I'm going to go to him. Everybody in every industry has examples like this. And sports is the prime example because it is the ultimate meritocracy. And that's the part of the Justin Tucker story here with the Baltimore Ravens that is getting overlooked. Instead, the media is outraged. Here's what they were outraged by yesterday with the Justin Tucker story. They were outraged that the Ravens put out a statement saying sometimes football decisions are incredibly difficult. And you had ESPN anchors being like, oh, you're talking about this like it's just a football decision.
How dare you?
But in classic sports media fashion, which is way woker than news media, that, of course, is their angle. Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, wait, all the nonsense that we try to sell sports fans on got blown up with this Justin Tucker story and the real narrative around it.